Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for being with us today. It's a pleasure to have you. And this is one more LLAC Invite event. And today we have Brian Hotson with us from the University of Dalhousie, Canada. We hope you learned something new today because the topic is very important to our community as well as higher education all over the world. Please take notes, listen, and pay attention. At the end of the event, you would have an opportunity to ask questions. And if you have any burning questions while the presentation goes on, please write in the comment section. Before we start the talk, I would give a brief bio of our guest today. Brian Hotson has 25 years experience as an education program developer and educator. His work has included stints as writer, producer, and director in education television and digital media, as well as writer and program developer in education textbook publishing. His work is published in the Journal of College Science Teaching, the Canadian Journal for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, Canadian Journal of Studies in Discourse and Writing, and the Writing Center Journal. He is a co-editor of the recently launched journal, SKRIB, Critical Studies in Writing Programs and Pedagogy, as well as an editor of the Canadian Writing Center Revue. Brian research and writing focuses on social justice, decolonization, inclusion, and equity. Brian, you have the platform now to take over. Guys, have a nice session. Thank you.
Thank you, Tosin. I appreciate that. And that's a very nice introduction. Thank you all for inviting me here today to talk about writing and a way of looking at writing and students' relationship with writing as well. First of all, I just want to start off with land acknowledgement. So Dalhousie University is located in the land of the Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, and we are all treaty people. Unceded means that the Mi'kmaq people who are indigenous to Nova Scotia, where Dalhousie is, means that they never signed a treaty, and in fact, we live on their land. We also recognize that African Nova Scotians are distinct people whose histories, legacies, and contributions have enriched that part of Mi'kmaq, known as Nova Scotia, for over 400 years. So today I want to do my talk on this science program that I ran a few years ago. But before I start, I want to thank Tosin for inviting me to the University of Sao Paulo today to do this talk. I want to also start off by saying I apologize for not speaking to you in Portuguese. I am unilingual English, unfortunately. I also want to thank Maria Mendez Ferreira, the Writing Center coordinator, for the invitation, as well as to the University of Sao Paulo. It's very kind to come to you today from. I'm in Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada today, not in Nova Scotia, but I'm happy to be here wherever I'm located. So our talk today is going to go through, these are the points that I want to cover. There's really 6 points there. I'm going to look at really this program called the Report Support Science Writing Program and what that looked like, how we went through it, how we developed it, and importantly, the outcomes that we has as a result. As we go through, as Tosin said, please put your comments in the comment box. Ask your questions there. I won't be able to see your questions until the end, but Tosin will make a note of those and then we can follow up at the end. So let's look at some of the theoretical background. So looking at the edited text from 2012 Writing Programs Worldwide. Some of the things these 3 things are quite important in terms of thinking about science writing and how that is brought to the students through a course or through a department, or even as a genre. So I think these are three really important things that need to be reminded. We need to remind ourselves of when we are developing programs, teaching, tutoring, what have you. The first one is that students become really committed writers when their instructors, their teachers, are able to explain the importance of the task and provide feedback, continual feedback, that then convinces them that writing is important. When that convincing happens, they are also more stimulated to write as well, which is significant in terms of students who aren't necessarily always strong writers. Students who respond favorably to writing instruction and who read professors' feedback express that writing helped them learn biology or any other science. So for this program, this is really key because from a writing center perspective, of course, we look at the feedback that professors give to students, and then we help the student incorporate those feedbacks into their own writing. And then the last part, and this is also significant, is that teachers who adopt this model of teaching strategies that are interwoven into their course often study the practices as part of their research commitment. So we need to encourage faculty members and instructors to do research into their own writing discourse, if their field, as well as the genre of writing that is natural to their own field of study. So, science writing is one large body of writing, but of course, it's different for different fields, whether it's psychology or whether it's physics, or in this case, biology. As a result of our study of this program, we did a 3-year study of this program, and so these are some of the things that we found when we were looking at the students coming in. So the first one was that many students are surprised when they realize how much writing is required, especially in biology. Faculty, they recognize the importance of communication in writing courses, but report a reluctance to teach it or to assign writing for a variety of reasons. And then the last one that we found is really important is that while thinking of science writing as a discourse or genre, supporting more thorough and thoughtful exchanges in their work. So that's what we need to do with students through their feedback, is to show them that they are using a genre of writing and that they're using a discourse. So we often think about that in other, like say in the humanities or the arts, we think about discourse and genre, but of course this is equally important in the sciences as well. Oops, I'm going backwards. Sorry, everyone, one sec here. Okay, so I want to go over the program itself, and just give you a background of what the program looked like. The program of writing support that we initiated was for a first-year biology course called Biology 1201, which was a microbiology course, and the class itself had about 250 students generally. 18 to 20% were international students, so they were not born in Canada, and they spoke. There were 27 different languages spoke in the course. So you can imagine what the levels of pedagogies that were coming in there from different non-Western educational backgrounds, different teaching methods that were all coming into one course. one of the things that was happening here as well was that there was a high level of academic integrity issues in the course, mainly because students who were coming in, they didn't think they had to write, and so they were accessing these labs that were being given to them on the internet and then submitting them. And so what was happening as a result of the academic integrity issues, the students' inability to write, a significant number of multilingual students, is that the biology course stopped doing wet labs, which was obviously not a good thing, and it reduced the rigor of the course as a result, and it reduced the learning of the students. So the program itself that I developed in relationship with my colleagues basically had significant portion of it came through the tutors that I hired to work with the students in the program. So the tutors that I hired spoke the languages of the students, not all 27, but I had Arabic speaking students, I had Spanish speaking students. So we had tutors who could speak those languages as well as French. And also tutors who had advanced degrees in science, as well as a record of good science writing themselves. The support for this program came from the vice president academic, and also support from the dean and the chairs of biology. And then I collaborated with my colleague, David Danzero, at the University of St. Mary's, and together we developed this program. The funding itself came through a fund that was generated out of the Vice President's office, the International Student Fund, and the funding. So the funding was then, which I also sat on this committee, and so once we got the funding solidified through this committee, then I approached the program director for biology, and we started thinking about how best we could create a program to support Biology 1201 and the students there, so that he could bring back the rigor into the course, as well as helping students to learn how to write. That was a significant portion that had been removed as a result of the academic integrity issues and having as many international students in there that were enrolled. So we had support, as I said, from the vice president, also support from the dean of science, as well as the chair of biology. So the support there was significant, as you can imagine. And then I hired a lead tutor. I was very fortunate to have as a lead tutor a geneticist, Dr. Lindsay Carmichael, who was my lead tutor. And then I hired tutors who all had advanced degrees, at least a master's degree in a genre of science, chemistry, and biology. We then worked back and forth with the biology marker graders, who were the TAs as well for the course. And then there was constant collaboration between the lead tutor and the marker graders, as well as the program director. So it was, we ran this program for 3 years, and we refined it as we went through it. And so some of these things, became quite a well-oiled machine, as we say. And as I mentioned, I'll just go back here. So once I met with the program director, Dr. Danzero, he reshaped his syllabus to bring the program into his course and embed it in the course itself. And that was significant for the course's success. So there was a lot of trust that was built between Dr. Danzero and myself, as well as Dr. Carmichael, the lead tutor. So the three of us, we met on a regular basis to make sure this program was running well. I want to talk I want to talk about what we did prior to launching the program. We did a series of surveys as part of the study. So we, as I mentioned, we did a 3-year study, and this was had a research ethics board approval that we eventually published. So the first part, this was significant. We found was that there was really no difference between domestic and international students in terms of their confidence to write in biology. The thing that is most important to this biology course is that all science students at the university came through this course. So this was a required course for all science students, which is one of the reasons why we purposely focused on it. And you really had a broad spectrum of students coming in. So we found it interesting that there was really no difference between the confidence in writing in the sciences, but the language skill in English, obviously, there was significantly difference between international and domestic students. With the domestic students obviously feeling much more confident in writing in English. Now, in terms of the program processes, this was significant, as I mentioned. Dr. Dansro had taken the course taken the program and incorporated it into his syllabus. So there were 4 reports that were required as part of the course. And these reports would come from the wet lab. So in preparation for this course, Dr. Dansro added back in the wet lab, which is significant, obviously. But then he added in these 4 assignments. And so essentially after doing the wet lab, then the students were then asked to write the different parts of the report, and then turn them in for marks. So this is where we got into the process of developing the program, the report support program, and helping students to understand before they started writing. So each part of those assignments was divided into 4 weeks, and so the first part of it was an in-lab workshop. So this was the in-lab workshop, writing workshop, was run by myself and some of the other tutors, and these would be very simple and straightforward writing teaching sessions. Whether they were be about. So for example, the first assignment that the students were being graded on was the materials and methods section, which is we just called the M&M. And so the materials and methods section obviously is important because you need to have precision. You also need to not over describe things. And you also need to have a kind of narrative in there as well that will lead, into the rest of the lab report. So the in-lab writing workshops were designed specifically to help students to develop their skills in that part of the lab that they were writing. So if they were writing the materials and methods section, we did a lab a writing workshop specifically on how to do that. So then they went away and they wrote their report, and then they had the option. They could then hand it in, and it would be marked. So the students would then have their paper back, and whatever their grade was, they had the option then to come and to get some tutoring. One of the I think the part that actually worked the best, I think, in terms of this whole process was that if the students wanted to resubmit their paper, they had to come and get writing tutoring from our program tutors. So this is where we get back to the theoretical underpinnings of the program, in the sense that when the students came in with their marked paper and it had the comments on it, the student could then sit down and see, one, that the instructor cared about the student's work enough to put significant comments in there or helpful suggestions. So they saw that aspect of it. They also saw then that there was a genre within biology, and there was also a discourse that is being used through the materials and methods section. So these three things were deeply embedded in the writing tutoring. It just wasn't like, okay, we're just going to fix this thing. The tutors themselves were schooled in this kind of approach, so through training and so on, but also because they were science writers themselves. So the student could not hand in or resubmit their paper unless they went to the tutoring session. So they go to the tutoring session. We had a way to sign off on it, and then the student could resubmit for final grading. So this became also very important when we were doing our study, to see the difference between students who did not come to the writing session and then just resubmitted, or those students who did. So that became quite important, obviously. So this worked similarly for all four of the assignments that the students were asked to do throughout the course. So within the syllabus itself for the course, these were built in. So the student would see the assignment being made in the syllabus and then see how the instruction would go with the writing workshop, doing the lab, doing the report, doing the tutoring, and this would be on all the weeks that are in the syllabus. So that actually also solidified for the students the understanding that the teacher is involved, deeply involved in their writing process, which was key. One of the most successful workshops that I've done, and one of the most fun workshops that I've done, is what I call the M&M Lego workshop. So this is, I don't know if anyone's done this before. It's a great way for science students to understand the materials and methods section. And I've run this for first year students, and I've run this for grad students, and everyone seems to love this workshop. Works very simply. You have, and I'll provide a link to this as well. You have 10 pieces of Lego in a bag, just 10 random pieces of Lego in a bag. And depending on how many students you have, you divide them up into groups. Usually 4 works best. You give each of the groups a bag of these Lego, and you ask them to build a structure. Could be any structure, doesn't matter. But the goal is to write down, using a materials and methods approach, how to reconstruct this model, whatever it is they're building, so that if it's taken apart, then you could give the instructions and the Lego to someone else, and then they could rebuild it. So it's a lot of fun. You go in the class, you pull out Lego, everybody's excited because, Lego's fun. And but one of the things that you add into this, and you don't really tell them at the time, is that you're then going to share the Lego and their instructions with the other groups. So they do the build the model or whatever it is there. You see here, I'm not quite sure what that is. Could be, doesn't matter, a horse perhaps. Anyway, you build your model, you write down exactly how to put it together in that way, and then you pass it, you take it all apart and you pass it to the next group. They read the materials and methods section that you've written, and then they try to recreate what it is that you've done. It's very simple, but the learning is significant. One, because you're showing, once again, genre, and you're showing discourse as well at the same time. Plus, you're also physically writing down the materials and methods. The interesting thing I always find when I run this workshop is that some students will just do straight word descriptions. Others will do drawings. Some others will do drawings and word descriptions. And some are more successful than others. And so then what I do is I go around and I take a photo. And for a while there, I was posting them on Twitter so that we could get lots of interactions from others on social media. But I would take a photo of the piece so that when the students pass their pieces around, I could then do a comparison with the camera. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. But what I did in doing this was that because the instructor was in the room when I did this, the instructor then saw what I was doing. Of course, I told them in advance, but they saw the process, and so I got invited to other science classes other than the biology to do this workshop, and especially it was also kind of a bit of an icebreaker kind of thing for graduate students, which was a lot of fun. And so it's a very good workshop. So these are the kinds of workshops that we would offer in the first week, as I mentioned previously, of the 4 weeks of that writing process. So we do the workshop, they would do the lab, then they would submit their paper, and then to resubmit, they would have to go to the writing tutoring session, get their support. So it's reinforced in the beginning with the writing workshop. The writing is then reinforced again with the writing tutoring, and then when they see their mark, which inevitably is higher, then it becomes embedded in their own understanding of the writing process and genre and discourse. I keep repeating those things because it's so important for folks to understand that there is a science writing discourse. So I want to talk about the outcomes of the program next, which were significant and were also surprising. We were anticipating some kinds of outcomes, but others we didn't anticipate, and all of them were, as we say, they were happy outcomes. The one thing that was significant was, and what I present to you here, as you can see, the students who attended the tutoring session before initial submission. So this were the students who just attended the workshop. So for example, on the materials and methods section, you attended the Lego workshop, and then you submitted your paper. The students who did not attend the Lego workshop for the materials and methods, they average their mark was 59%. And for students who did attend the Lego workshop for materials and methods, their mark on average was 10% higher. So it's significant. We were very happy about that. We did not expect that kind of difference between those students at the beginning. We were focusing on the tutoring. When it does come to the tutoring, so the students who did attend the tutoring session after they had submitted their paper, so that to resubmit, they needed to attend the tutoring session. 27% on average higher mark was awarded to those students who attended the tutoring session. Now you can imagine if you are someone who did get a 60 on your initial attempt and then received an 87, not only is that a higher GPA, but it's also a confidence builder in you as a science writer. So when I do these sessions with students, I always say, you are junior scholars who are learning how to write. So, and when they actually see that they are scholars, when they do see that the instructor's comments are important, embedded into their writing, and it's coming true, The comments that they're getting on the paper are like, you should need to fix this and you will get a better mark. And then it comes true, the reinforcement for them as students, the knowledge that's created is very significant. So I really want to make sure that that we see this, because we were very surprised. In the field of writing centers, it's very hard to have empirical information, empirical data with significance to show that writing tutoring is important and successful. So when we got this, we were pretty happy to be able to have this. And luckily, I had a geneticist who could read all the data and parse it all out. So I didn't do it because I don't know how to do that stuff. But the math geniuses were there to do all this, do all the parsing. Now, the other thing that was important, I think, that the improvement in the writing between the domestic students and the international students was insignificant. It was about 4 to 5% difference, which is fairly insignificant considering the numbers of students, as well as the differentiation between learning types and learning cultures that all of these students brought with them. So that was something we were quite surprised about, that there was really no significant difference between international and domestic students in their improved writing. The other one was that actually warms my heart, makes me very happy, is that 66% felt better prepared for future courses. When I'm training writing tutors or writing teachers, oftentimes when a student leaves the writing center, for example, I always say to my tutors, they don't need to leave happy. They just need to leave being assured that they are better prepared. So when I read that, I was very excited about that, because 66% felt they were better prepared for their courses. 87% felt more confident writing lab reports than they did at the beginning of the semester. Also, significant improvement in their feeling about their writing. Not necessarily that they did better. We know they did better as a result of because the numbers show us, but they felt more confident. And a student, as you know, who feels more confident in themselves is much more likely to take risks, to push themselves, and to put themselves in better learning situations. So I was very happy to see that as well. Some other outcomes that were significant, and again, this one we didn't really anticipate, but what we did in this program between Dr. Danzaro, the director of the biology program, and the Writing Center, we created this cohort of students who moved through the university. So because, and I was speaking to Tosin about this before I came on to do the talk, because the Biology 1201 program, all of the science students who come into the university have to take this course. As a result of feeling more assured of their writing abilities, having a higher score, and also understanding the scientific method, they were able to go out into physics, chemistry, all the other sciences, feeling confident. So what we got back, reported back to us from other faculty members in the science faculty, was that they saw a student in their courses who was much better prepared coming into their courses, and they were able to increase the rigor of their courses as a result, which makes me very happy as well. The other thing that was that we came out of this was that we had been using the Writing Center had been using a specific book, a biology book on the scientific method, as had the biology department. But what we lacked was a teaching resource that had all the elements specifically for the science faculty at St. Mary's University. So out of this program, we organized through the Writing Center and through the Faculty of Science to develop a resource specifically for St. Mary's University, for the students. So the students could use this resource to advance their own writing, no matter what discipline they're in. So this, what you see here on the red, and I think I sent a link to it. This was written by a number of faculty members across all fields. So there was a physicist, astrophysicist, chemistry, biology, and so on. And so it covered all the bases there. The other part here was we ended up developing a significant partnership between the science faculty as well through the science faculty and the Writing Center, which didn't exist before. So I had worked for a number of years in science publishing, textbook publishing for some large publishing houses. So I understood the importance of teaching, of writing and science. As a result of this program, we also developed a similar embedded program for our engineering course as well, and then a series of workshops for science graduate students. The course itself, after the funding ran out from the special program, was picked up by the Office of the Dean of Science. So it became, the biology program became embedded into the course itself and was funded by science, which was like, hooray. We got some funding here that's significant and year over year. And the other part that was great was that Dr. Danzero, Dr. Carmichael, and myself, where we published the result of this study in the Journal of Science Teaching. I know that this is the publishing of the piece has helped folks over time. I get feedback from folks about how the article has helped them in their own development of teaching supports in science as well. So those are some pretty significant outcomes that came about of it. Some more focused outcomes here was that the biology director was able to increase the rigor of the course. He was dismayed that he had to take out the wet lab from a microbiology course. And so he was able to add the wet lab back in. He had the support through the funding from the Office of the Dean of Science, and also because of the way that the writing was done, the instances of academic integrity issues or cheating fell dramatically, which is significant, as you know. And then I mentioned about the same program being instituted into the engineering program, and then as I said, the instructors from other courses noticed that this cohort of students was well equipped for the courses in subsequent years. So those are some really important things that came out of it. This is the quote that I pulled out of here. So, students who respond favorably to writing instruction and who read the professor's feedback express that writing helped them learn biology. Now, that's a very simple phrase, sentence, but there's a lot in there that we can take away and think about science writing and how it's embedded into a program. So this program is different, say, from a writing in the disciplines, a WAC-WID program. because it's run through a writing center where you get support. So writing centers don't necessarily, they're not necessarily teaching, although the teaching is important as part of writing centers. But the tutoring aspect of it, what our job is in writing centers, and I think this is significant, is to help the students think for themselves. So I often talk about writing centers um, as really as thinking centers. And if you really want to get down to it, it's actually thinking about thinking center. So that's really what I think writing centers are about, because we're really teaching the students to be able to. We're not just teaching them about genre or discourse. We're teaching them about how to think about genre and how to think through discourse. So you can teach someone discourse, but one of the things that we do in writing centers, and this is the same for writing centers at University of Sao Paulo or anywhere in the world, is to help the students to think about it. We have a saying in English: you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink the water. So our job really is to take the student to the precipice and then help them to see the way forward, because it's in that process of them recognizing where they need to go as a learner. That's where the teaching is, the self-teaching, and that's where the learning is for the students as well. So that's the program that we ran. As it adapted over time, we had actually planned to run the program through the higher years in the biology program. But what we found was that the students who had come through the first year, they didn't really require the same amount of support in the second and third years of their programs. So we didn't really develop that afterwards. So we just stuck with the biology 1201 program, and it's been quite successful since. And it's truly been one of the highlights of my career, to be able to see students be successful through themselves, to develop their own thinking, and to be able to develop their own ways of writing and producing knowledge. So thank you so much for inviting me here today. At the end of this slide presentation, which is in the chat, there are references here to those theoretical underpinnings that I have put in here, and then I've also added one or two more readings that might be helpful for you if you are developing your own, or thinking about trying to start some embedded writing in your own programs as well. So there is a question here. So there's a question here that discussion section is often a challenging portion of the paper for writers. What good practical approaches do you see in this work? So anyway, I'll go throw it over to you, Hotson, first, though, before we get into there.
You can go on with the questions, and at the end of the day, we would finish it up. So go ahead.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jose. Yeah. So the discussion section, as you know, most people, when you pick up a science report, first thing you do is you turn to the discussion section. Then you go to the results, and then you go up to the materials and methods section. Yes, I think some of the approaches there are more nuanced. So one of the ways that I have approached the discussion section is to use something that is more, especially for first year students, that is more less science formal and more in a say Wired magazine, for example. I don't know if you know Wired magazine. It's a more approachable magazine. I've used a couple examples from there because of the way that the discussion sections are written in something like Wired magazine or Nature, bit more formal, or Scientific American, for example. I've also used those as an example. Um, they're much more colloquial, and so what I would do is I would photocopy these sections from the magazines, and then I would give them out to students, and I would have them go through. We would go through it together, and we would see where all the relevant materials were in there, and then we would pull them out. So I would, in advance, I would have this discussion section from a magazine. I would have it put up onto the screen, and I would show where the important and relevant information is there. Then I would try to pull that out and then show how we could then organize that information into a discussion section that had more formal approach to it. I asked students to read the kinds of journals in their own field, and then try to copy that as well. Copy not the not the data, but the way that they write, and it would help them to increase their understanding of their own writing process. But I found that using this workshop, using non-scientific magazines, like, well, they're scientific but not formal reports, helped students a lot. I hope that answers your question. What are the most common struggles faced by students? I've worked with thousands of students. It's not a hyperbole to say. And I used to run a first year writing program for students prior to coming into university. It was called Jumpstart. And at the beginning of the program, I would have students write out on cards what their greatest fear was about coming into university. And most of those fears revolved around a fear of not fitting in and not being up to scratch. So in our university, the majority of students who dropped out in the first year dropped out by so in Canada, we have a celebration on October 11th, which is called Thanksgiving. It's very different than the American Thanksgiving. And 20 to 25% of students who drop out in the first year drop out by Thanksgiving. So our job was to try and build their confidence through a first year experience programming, to build their confidence. And also, if a student can find a group that they fit in with, that also helps significantly. So developing study groups, writing groups, those are things that I would always be trying to develop with students, and find them a friend, essentially. But I think the big thing is just anxiety and fear of failure. And then, of course, students who are away from home, that also is an added fear, anxiety that can be mitigated through support. Thank you for that question. Hope that answers your question. So the question here, my students here in Brazil report that they have a hard time understanding the method sections as they read, which makes it difficult to write. Do you have any suggestions about how to approach this? Yeah, so it can be very daunting because especially when you don't, if you've never had experience writing the materials and methods sections before. So I think breaking it down into very pedantically, breaking it down sentence by sentence and making it very simple. Because you get students who say, I took the agar and I put it on the bench, and then I opened the case and I put the pipette in, and I did the, like, you don't need to know all of those things. So sometimes it's a matter of some students overwriting, and then of course there's students, like you're saying, who don't understand how to do it. I would approach it by giving them, as I mentioned before to Jose, to go to a magazine, something that would be more less formal, but it involves science, and get them to try and find the materials and methods section in there, and see if they can find it, and then write it out themselves in their own way, and then see how that fits in with the genre of writing and materials and methods section that you are wanting from your students. I think that can be very helpful. It's a good way to model their own experience, and also in terms of thinking about from the theoretical perspective, students who are participating themselves in their own understanding of genre, um, they're going to the learning is going to be greater in terms of their own understanding moving forward. So if you can find something that you can bring in that can then model that formality, I think that might be very helpful. I hope that's helpful for you, Daniela. So Patrice asked, what do you think are the most important steps to changing your relationship with our writing as students? Yeah, that can be a very personal thing. Writing is an emotional process. I mean, I've been a writer for many years, and it's an emotional thing. And some days I can't write a thing. I'll sit down to write, which is part of my job, and I can't write. So I often have ways of getting started. So sometimes I will literally just start typing anything on the keyboard, anything, and it'll start to come. In terms of steps to moving yourself forward with your relationship to your writing, I think what you need to do there is you need to find your own way in to how you feel about your writing. So that means reading in your own genre. So let's go back to biology again. Um, Read some magazines about biology. So in Canada, for example, we have something. Oh, sorry, I was going to use a different example, but we have a magazine called Canadian Geographic, which is it has some science in there about the environment and so on. Read that. I always just say go and read a lot of things to see where you are drawn towards. Who are the writers out there that you are drawn towards yourself, and then try to emulate that person. Over time, you will develop your own voice will come out of that, and it just comes from writing. The other thing that I would say that's so important is getting to write with people that you know and that you trust. So I'm very fortunate to have a writing partner who I publish with, and I trust that person. Sometimes they will make sentence level changes, and we over the years we've developed a trust with each other. When you're developing your own writing, it's good to have people around you who are going to tell you that your writing is terrible, and you're not going to take it to heart. They're going to be like, yeah, you're right, this is horrible. And or they're also going to say to you, man, this is really good writing. And those are the kinds of people that you want around you. And I think that can then lead to for students going to see your professor. So your professor is the expert in that field. And so I often say to students, go and make an appointment with your professor. Take your writing with you and go in and say, I'm not here to dispute anything. I just want to ask you about X. I just want to ask you about my materials and methods section. You've written a lot on this. I want to know how this works. And that does two things. It gets the professor interested in you as a student in their course, but also develops a relationship with the course itself, and that can help you ground yourself into your writing. So I hope that's helpful for you. Oh, okay. So Gabriella has a question here. You mentioned that domestic students self-rated their writing skills higher than international students at the beginning. Was the self-reported confirmed? No, I didn't know actually through these classes. So their confidence between domestic and international students was almost the same. It was the English language skills that were different in terms of their confidence to write in English. So just to say again, the writing skills was the same. There was only a 4% difference between the international and domestic students. It was the English writing in English that was quite different. Because we had in our program our tutors who spoke the language of the students. So in the program at the time, we had a lot of Arabic speaking students, and we also had a lot of students from the Caribbean. And so I had a Bahamian tutor, a Jamaican tutor, and several tutors one from Kuwait, another one from Iraq, and so a lot of those in Saudi Arabia. So a lot of the tutors, when the students come in, they see people who look like them, which is really important, and also they can. And I have no, there's no rules in my writing center about speaking English only. So when you come into the writing center, you can hear Arabic, French, Spanish, whatever language is going to work to help the student get through, Mandarin. So that's also significant. We didn't test about the international students' confidence in English writing after. That actually would have been a good thing to survey.
Okay, thank you so much, Brian Hotson. Thank you, Professor, for your time and sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. Basically, your talk today gives credence to what we do at the Laboratory of Academic Literacy, where we support students, because your talk basically makes us understand that writing is a social process. So it cannot be done single-handedly. It requires several factors to make it good. And also for students writing, you become better writing by writing. And that's something your talk gave credence to. So we really appreciate your time. We appreciate your wealth of knowledge. And we hope we have you when we need you next time. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching this webinar. It was a pleasure having you this afternoon. And we hope to see you in our next LLAC event in August. Thank you so much and have a nice day. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Tosin.